It is Ryan Seacrest here. There was a recent social media trend which consisted of flying on a plane with no music, no movies, no entertainment. But a better trend would be going to ChumbaCasino.com. It's like having a mini social casino in your pocket. Chumba Casino has over 100 online casino-style games, all absolutely free. It's the most fun you can have online and on a plane. So grab your free welcome bonus now at ChumbaCasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Hello listeners, and welcome to part 2 of this mini-series on Freedom Fire Ministries and Eva's Eden. Early access to ad-free content, you can find me at patreon.com/the Cult Vault for only £1 a month, but for now, here is Desi. Well, interestingly, yesterday I had a conversation with an author named Molly Salons, and we were discussing her initial introduction to the group that she became a part of. And Molly, in her mind, felt like she needed a purpose in life, and that if she was able to find a husband and have kids, that would solve her bouts of depression and her seeking something more in life. And when she was introduced to the group, she found a whole group of really loving, love bombing, we realize now, really loving, interested, attractive, well-groomed men with no rings on their fingers. Which she later realized that they were all married, but they were told for that exact purpose not to wear their rings. And she said that it was such a life-changing experience in that moment in her life that she was instantly hooked. And we talked a little bit about that hook, and she said, isn't it strange that that's all it took? And then we realized not really, because a lot of her time then spent in the group was seeking that initial euphoric feeling that she had when she first joined the group. And the prophecy that you received from Cheryl that really spoke to you and you know, made you feel the way that you did, so much so you're able to remember even today exactly what she said. It's that same type of thing, isn't it? It's you know, I want to believe that God knows me, that God watches over me and understands how I think and feel. Of course.
Yeah.
Who wouldn't want that? So we go from kind of a standard church gathering to something a bit stranger. And then the abusive practices start coming in. There's a possibility that Cheryl is talking into your parents' ears about ways to discipline their child. And I mean, what you explained in terms of a little bit of boundary pushing, risk taking, typical teenage behavior in terms of experimenting with marijuana. I mean, I say this so casually now. I imagine that when my children start to take part in risk taking behavior, it will be a whole different thing. But at the time you're talking to me about this, I'm thinking about me as a teenager. And instead of the mobile home, the trailer situation, which is just absolutely shocking. If Cheryl would have been a judge or an educational consultant or a psychologist, it could have been a troubled teen facility that you were placed in instead of a trailer.
Yeah.
But that same reasoning, you know, the experimenting with drugs, the books, the questionable books that they found in your bedroom, and then your outness as a bisexual individual.
Yeah.
So in terms of the church itself, how was the LGBT community received?
Yeah, no, it definitely wasn't like speaking to like man shall only lie with woman type thing was never on the forefront of their priorities, but it was definitely not accepted. Actually, I don't know a whole lot of other people besides Rachel and Mary, their sisters, that both got out after they moved over there. But I do know that Mary came out as queer as well. And so, yeah, but she felt that she had to hide it. And also, she started there as an adult. Um, so, um, there was, yeah, it wasn't talked about, but the little that it was not okay. Um, so I didn't have a whole lot of support. And actually, going back to the troubled teen industry for a minute, I never went to like an actual facility like that, but there was one time um where like there was an argument between me and my parents, and they called the cops on me, and I got taken to, I think it was called Birch Bay House, but it was basically like a small short-term version of that, where it was basically like, we can't deal with you, go to this place for a weekend or whatever. And it was that time and one other time where I like went and spent like a weekend or so with this family that I guess was kind of conscripted to do that with a lot of other troubled teens. And there was actually another girl living there at the time. That was actually how I first heard Eminem. She put it on in the car. So, um, but yeah, so yeah, um, I don't really ever recall like it being a threat on the table, sort of like, military school type threat or whatever. But I do remember from time to time hearing about the different programs, either like from my mom or my mom's friends or like someone, because I remember even hearing about it before we started going to Freedom Fire, when we were still going to the Assemblies of God church. It was called, I remember there was a brochure and it was like a lavender color, but that was about it. Yeah, it definitely wasn't like a big, you know, um, stand outside something with a picket thing, or anything like that. But um, yeah, it's not like if I had stayed in the church, I could have dated a woman and gotten married by the pastor type of thing, you know. So
And at some point, Cheryl starts introducing some other questionable beliefs in terms of the National Treasure films, and
yeah,
which
yeah.
which
So
is, it's just interesting for me reading your emails back to me, because
mhm,
I absolutely love treasure hunt films. I
yeah,
could watch them all day. I love
but
the idea of going on a treasure hunt, finding all the
right.
treasure. And
It's the underlying conspiracy theories is what they were obsessed with.
that's the thing. That's the key thing. So when you were talking to me about the Da Vinci Code and about the National Treasure films and the links between the Freemasons and the Knights Templar, I do find that interesting. I don't know how much credence there is to it, considering that there is so much make-believe material based on those potentially hidden secrets.
Hmm.
But what I couldn't help but think in my mind when you were talking about Cheryl moving everybody to this Masonic temple is her trying all the tiles in the floor and all of the, like all the light switches and stuff just to see if anything moves in the
Just in case.
building.
Are there any hidden passageways?
So my vision is Cheryl on her hands and knees, kind of trying all the tiles on the floor and the floorboards, and just hoping that her idea of the truth is, hidden in
Right.
that building.
Well, and that,
So
yeah, if she had found something like that, you better believe that she'd use it in the service of like, dramatically. Because what she would do with a lot of prophecies is either during or another day, she would like bring it back or like have another prophecy that kind of elaborated on another one. And she would do prophetic acts, which was basically like acting out or pantomiming um some aspect of the prophecy, or like just driving it home in a certain way. um like there was one time, and I don't remember like the substance of any of them, what it would be regarding, um but there was one time where she like smashed a vase full of water. And most of these, I only ever went to the Masonic temple once. I had for the most part gotten out prior to the move. So all of these things happened in this tiny little sanctuary, where they rented basically like an office space. Um, but they had like the upstairs and the downstairs. And so the sanctuary was literally, I mean, you can't see my apartment, but it's probably twice the size of this. It's really not that big. And so like she's in the front of the room smashing like a huge vase of water, and just water and shards of glass flying everywhere. Um, there's another time, and it was more than once, because also like I sent you a bunch of the links, and I was, rereading some of them and re-listening in the, weeks and tonight leading up to this. Um, but one thing that I read, and I remember it differently, is that they said she pricked her finger and dripped it into a goblet of juice. And I distinctly remember one time where she actually slit her wrist, like not just pricked her finger, but full on like, and I think there was something to do with like she like specifically said something about she was using an athame, a ritual dagger from pagan rites. Um, and but I'm pretty sure that was like a one-time thing. You can't really keep doing that. It's probably not very good for you. Um,
expecting everybody to drink from this goblet.
mhm. Everybody
Oof.
did. Yeah. So, um, and like speaking of my parents, like just kind of doing whatever they were told, um, we had raised, we lived on a farm by that time, and so we had raised all kinds of animals. And we had raised I can't remember if it was a goat or a lamb, but
Oh no.
and we like had to, my dad slaughtered it and cooked it over like this big pit, and then we all had to eat it at the, which is also kind of funny because another belief that they started doing a couple years later was they're all vegetarian now. Um, so, and I was never really sure. I think there was an element of like, like save the animals type of thing, but also it had to do a little bit with like um trying to eat the way they used to eat. Like what was the it was a specific like band of people back in the Bible days. It started with an E. but I can't remember what it is. And yeah, it was all more convoluted stuff, definitely trying to like exert some control.
Would it be
Um,
Enoch's?
I think it might have been actually, yeah.
I thought that maybe it would be sort of maybe a kosher diet influence, but it's strictly vegetarianism.
Hmm. Yeah.
So Cheryl starts bringing in influences of esotericism, New Age spirituality,
Hmm.
Egyptology, talking
Hmm.
about how things that were taken by secret societies and hidden movements in history, actually all that stuff belonged to Cheryl and her followers, which is just
Hmm.
really interesting.
Hmm.
Um, but also on top of that, you've still got the religious aspects, and she is bringing in influences from different pantheons, Mayan influences, Celtic influences. It's
Hmm.
kind of like at this point she is reading different different things from different belief systems and kind of picking and choosing what she thinks
Hmm.
might fit her particular style of preaching.
Part of it is some of that stuff, especially like the actual like pantheons and stuff like that, came more after I wasn't really in it anymore. But again, was still it was before they moved, so my parents were still talking to me a little bit. Um, but again, it's just very, yeah, she would bring in the info, but we couldn't go research it. Um, and what's really funny is like some of it was like I already knew this from something else. And so, especially after I got out, I like try to be like, you do realize that this is this, and they're like, oh no, but it's but yeah, for a while, everything was still under the blood of Jesus Christ, under the anointing of Jesus Christ. Um, but after a while, they weren't saying that as much. I think maybe they hoped that it was implied.
It is Ryan Seacrest here. There was a recent social media trend which consisted of flying on a plane with no music, no movies, no entertainment. But a better trend would be going to chumbacasino.com. It's like having a mini social casino in your pocket. Chumba Casino has over 100 online casino style games, all absolutely free. It's the most fun you can have online and on a plane. So grab your free welcome bonus now at chumbacasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
So interesting. You could just imagine her watching the Da Vinci Code and being like, this is what we're going to put in next week. But I'm
Yep.
going to tell people that they're not allowed to research it because then they'll find out that I took it from a Dan Brown book or film.
Yeah. Well, no, like we watched the Da Vinci Code in church. And yeah, she like was able to somehow explain away that like, you know, I know that this seems fictionalized, but here's how it actually like, yeah.
Wow.
So, but I was just thinking about like talking about the anointing of Jesus and being slain in the spirit and stuff like that that I talked about earlier. And it made me think about another element um that I, had written about earlier. Um and it kind of goes into some of the like the inner workings that a lot of us weren't fully privy to, like the actual underpinnings, even though we saw some of it publicly. Um, but again, she's the queen bee. She had her inner circle, and one of them, her name was Maureen, and Cheryl one day, and to me it was seemingly kind of out of the blue, called her out as the angel of light, which I don't know if she actually pointed us somewhere in the Bible or not to where we were able to find the explanation, but essentially the angel of light is a being that comes to make you think that you're in the presence of Jesus, but it's all an illusion. It's basically like a demon or something like that. And so she called her that and threw her out. But Maureen also had a husband and 3 children still in the church. And she gave Pete, the husband, the ultimatum of divorce her and you can stay in the church or you all have to leave. And part of that was also all of his kids were like friends with like the pastor's kids and stuff like that. And so they got divorced. And then Cheryl married him like almost immediately, like almost as soon as the papers were dry. And then like a little bit of time passed and then she brought Maureen back in and Maureen was like fine with it because this was all supposed to be some like allegory of like God's relationship with the church and God's relationship with us. And like there was some mention of like some stuff going on in like some of the Old Testament books that like somehow had to do with some of it. Um and then later on she's still married to Pete, but then she's bringing this other guy from somewhere, I think he was from New Mexico. And like again, because like part of what she was trying to say is that the church as a whole, not us, but just, people who say that they're God's people are actually all whores and like, basically cheating on God. So she's going to cheat on God and she's going to cheat on Pete and marry this other guy. And there's again some stuff that you can also hear in the episodes on the opportunist that I wasn't really privy to, that had to do with like that guy, like at one point I guess almost killed her ex and stuff like that. And so, and that was just one of many like, you know, I mean, not political necessarily, but like in the scheme of a church, just kind of like all these power imbalances and like, and displays of power, you know.
And this entire time, you're struggling with a mental illness that you're not getting any support for,
Mm-hmm.
which really does it's the cause of your spiraling with behavior, with addiction, and Cheryl's answers to how you support your child through that is just completely the wrong advice. And I'm sure that with your therapist you must have talked through a lot about how everything was exacerbating everything.
Yeah.
So that must have been a really exhausting and confusing, difficult, and as you said, lonely time.
Yeah.
Was there a point where, I mean, you've talked about Jeannie and the librarian. Woo, yes, to those people who are like, hey, maybe we should read some literature or go and experience a different group and just see what, if we think that this is okay and normal, what is happening,
Mm-hmm.
or typical what is happening in this other church. Was there anybody else outside of the group that you were able to establish a friendship or a connection with that helped you really separate from the church finally, and support you through your difficulties?
So, when I was a junior, I started going to Running Start, which is where you can go to the community college while you're still in high school. And so I was able to meet some friends there. Um, uh, and one of them, she's actually still one of my best friends. I met her not even at the school. We were both going to the school, never in any of the same classes, but I met her on the bus, like the public transportation. And I still tell her about, like, I remember her wearing her like iconic bowler hat, and just um yeah, I knew we were gonna be friends. And yeah, she never so much, it was never like overt, like you need to get out. There was definitely times where we talked about it. But she definitely just more was just a supportive friend of, like, yeah, your parents suck. Like, um, and definitely was a refuge for me. I would go over to her house a lot. Um, and and so with going to Running Start, it both helped and hindered my high school experience overall. And I ended up um, uh, middle of my senior year, um, the trailer died. And when I say died, I mean, like, it was the way it like worked and ran, and like I could like plug in electronics and stuff, was it was plugged in by one main like extension cord to one of our outbuildings. And I guess I just overloaded it because I heard a big pop, and then everything went dark and quiet. And I go out and the extension cord is like melted. And so I went to the house and knocked on the door because, of course, the door is locked. And um, I had a room in the house the whole time, um, which they also, I will give them a little bit that when my grandparents lived there, the room that I had was called the back room or spare room. But that's what it always got called after that, too. They never called it mine. And so the night that happened, um, he let me come in. And by that point, I had just been in the trailer nonstop. At first, it was like a punishment. And, like, if you're on good behavior for a certain amount of days, you can come back into your room. But then by this time, I'm 18, and I had literally just turned 18, like,
It is Ryan Seacrest here. There was a recent social media trend which consisted of flying on a plane with no music, no movies, no entertainment. But a better trend would be going to ChumbaCasino.com. It's like having a mini social casino in your pocket. Chumba Casino has over 100 online casino-style games, all absolutely free. It's the most fun you can have online and on a plane. So grab your free welcome bonus now at ChumbaCasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
10 days prior. And so I go in, and the bed is covered in unfolded clothes because that just became the dumping spot for, when they did laundry. And so I had to shove stuff over, and I slept. It was probably, middle of the night, so slept. And I wake up because also, like, I don't have any of my stuff set up in the room. And so I didn't have my alarm clock. And I wake up to my dad throwing, I think it was like a package of like menstrual pads that was like on the floor or something, but like throwing them at me and saying, if you don't get on the bus, you can't come home tonight. And I missed the bus. And my grandpa lived in a little house that we had like built next door. And so I asked him to take me to school. And I get there and I'm like crying to the guidance counselor. And she's like, he didn't mean it. Let's call him. And she puts him on speakerphone. He's like, I meant it. And so I had to go live with another friend who was, their family was really helpful throughout like my teenage years. I don't talk to them much anymore, which is kind of a bummer. I really liked her a lot. Um, but so I stayed with them for a little bit, and then I got into transitional living through Northwest Youth Services, and I got my GED before everybody in my class graduated. Like graduation's in June, and I got my GED certificate in the mail in May. And that's also kind of when a lot of other risk-taking behaviors kind of took off in my life. But another person that was kind of there throughout, and I actually saw her up until September of 21, but was my therapist, Liz. And I started seeing her February of 2005 and saw her until September of 2021. Off and on a little bit. There was a couple years where like when I was in Job Corps and then my insurance was weird for a little bit. She made me want to be a licensed mental health counselor. Like, and specifically like what I started with her for was dialectical behavior therapy. And that's what I want to teach other people. Yeah. And like there was an element of like there were certain times where there wasn't a whole lot she could do besides like support me and like, you know, be that person that like, you know, obviously as a therapist, you can't be of full support like a family friend type of thing. But yeah, she she turned me on to my favorite artist, and she's still my favorite artist. Of all the music I listen to, she's the only one I have a tattoo for, which is Ani DeFranco. She's an indie folk rock artist that has a huge lesbian following, surprise, surprise. um, and I think it's really funny that out of all the music that my parents either were or were not okay with me listening to, which first of all, they never listened to it themselves to know, but my mom bought me tickets for my 19th birthday to see her when she came to Western Washington University here. And I'm like, had you actually like listened to her lyrics and known that Liz told me about her as a subtle FU to you guys? I don't think you'd buy me tickets.
It's strange hearing about your family dynamic because it's almost as if there's a cultic family environment, abusive and neglectful, but also your parents are buying you concert tickets and they still talk to you even though there's shunning
Yeah,
practices in the church. It's very, very strange, isn't it?
it's very strange, and it's very hard for me even now. Because especially like with the thing that happened last year when my mom, and it was mostly my mom. I don't talk to my dad a whole lot. Not that like just I mean, he's always been a man of few words, and also, you know, pretty domineering for the most part. The last several years, even though they don't agree with a lot of the stuff in my life, um, I feel like I could tell that he was trying to apologize without saying it. Um, Especially once I got sober, um, and they saw like the changes that I was trying to make to my life, regardless of anything else that they were not doing. Um, they were more willing to help me out when I needed it. Um, and you know, more willing to just talk to me about different stuff in general. But yeah, but when the thing happened where they said they weren't going to come, which didn't surprise me. Like I'm always going to hold out hope that maybe they'll finally accept me and whatever. But um, they just, especially once they moved to the South, which is just kind of conservative by default. They just really dug into those things. What's really funny is over the years, they, like, politically speaking, they didn't vote necessarily based on like the morals and values and beliefs that you would think, because they voted for Obama both times, and then they voted for Trump, and like they never were like pro-gay, but they were never like severely anti-gay. But then, in the years after, Trump and all that stuff, and moving to the South and just becoming increasingly more conservative. Also, my mom is a nurse and is anti-vaccines, which I don't know how that happened. Yeah, I held out hope, but I wasn't surprised. And so I tried to not talk to them. But again, me being the person I am, and also like something that I've been talking about with my therapist, which I have a new one now, who was suggested by Liz, and Liz suggested me to her, and Liz was the only reason she took me on, because she was closed otherwise. Everybody has that like inherent like need to have a connection with their like caregiver, their primary caregiver. And so, and especially like of the two of them, that's my mom, because like I was her firstborn. I was with her, even though it was only a year and a half, but like when she divorced my biological dad and all that stuff. So there really was and still is like a really strong bond between her and I. And honestly, a big part of it is, I think that some of the stuff that I talked about in me is definitely in her, as far as she's really just taken on the role of the dutiful, subservient Christian wife. And I like to think at one point she saw herself as, I'm surprised I haven't done this to this point, but I make movie references a lot. But My Big Fat Greek Wedding, when the mom says, the man may be the head of the house, but the woman is the neck, and she can turn the man any way she wants. And I'd like to think that my mom saw herself as that at one point. But I think she's definitely kind of lost herself. And so now she's kind of given into the tendency that I know I used to have, but I became aware of it. And so I actively work against it, which is kind of just being the chameleon, not really having any beliefs of my own. I just kind of go along with whatever anybody else thinks. Which I definitely had that in the cult, but then also I had that for a long time outside of it, like when I got out and like trying to find myself. And for me, that stems from some of my, mental health issues. I don't know so much if she has those or if it's just more, something else, but.
That is the end of part 2 of this mini-series on Freedom Fire Ministries and Eva's Eden. To get in touch with me, you can find me at cultvaultpodcast@gmail.com or follow me on Twitter and Instagram at cultvaultpod. I'm your speaker, Casey, host of the Cult Vault Podcast.
Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Coincidence? I think not. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere, even at 30,000 feet. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.